In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Empire.
Hello, and welcome to another live stream edition of the John Conn Report. Do me a favor, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube later, if you're joining us right now, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us on YouTube as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. You know that by now, and I always appreciate everybody tuning in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I hope to be joined in a minute by the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, as we go over a lot of what we saw the other day, but we're not going to go do a deep dive on all the stuff that went. There are a few things I think we need to focus on right now, and Sam Howell is chief among them, because at this point, the defense is pretty much what it is, and I'll get Bram's thoughts on that later. But the defense is what it is, folks. I don't see it getting a whole lot better, because that's not where it's at. So one of the things I wanted to do is to kind of focus on Sam Howell, the sacks, why he's better in that area, and just some areas of growth in his game, because that's what this season is becoming about. And there you can see Bram joining me right now. Bram, let's start off with Sam Howell. What were your impressions of him from the other day?
Really clutch. I think I've kind of landed on probably deserves a better record than he has. It's so funny. Like, we talked about all these years, we've talked about like having a quarterback, and they're like 1-3 with a quarterback who has over 300 yards passing. It's ridiculous. It's insane. That they lost after the comeback last week, that they lost at the end of the Philadelphia game where he came back twice, came back twice in this one, came back twice in that one. It's very clutch. And, he had a couple of moments like the two leak out passes to Robinson, one for a touchdown, one for a big play in the second half, that were just awesome. I mean, like the types of plays that elite level quarterbacks end up making. So, I'm obviously very excited about what he's doing and the way that he personally is playing in general. You'd think their record would be a little different. So I kind of feel for him, because I think he's posted the types of performances that you typically win with.
It's funny you say it, because that's one of the things I asked Ron Rivera on Monday is, if somebody laid out the scenario where you'd say, hey, Sam Howell is doing this after 10 games, and he just hit a 3-game stretch where he did this, what would you think the record would be? Because, if you're at the start of the season, someone gives you that scenario, you're certainly not going to think that, oh, they're 4-6, because going into the year, it was all about, well, if the offense can get to X point with the way the defense played last year, that you would think this would be a playoff team. And clearly that is not where they're headed at this point. But, I guess at least they have their guy. But, it's funny, because you bring up those, the little flick plays, as someone else on here, as Blaine pointed out too, a flick play to Robinson. And a couple of things that really stood out to me is, one, when the interior gives him good protection, he can step up into a gap, right? But he does such a good job keeping his eyes down the field. He did to kind of tuck the ball. And I think what's happening too, Bram, is that teams obviously have to respect his ability to run, because on that one and on the other one, guys are flying up at him because they know he's a danger when he's running the ball. But the ability to keep his eyes upfield and kind of throw off platform, he uses, not quite like Kyler Murray, but he's a baseball player. He's a guy who could have played baseball in college. Yeah, you can tell, like, some of the throws he makes, it's a sidearm flick, and it's just like you're kind of throwing a ball over, you throw a shortstop from the hole, throwing to second base. That's what he does, and I think it allows him to be creative with that and make big plays off that. And you're right, like the clutch gene is there for him. And what's in the fourth quarter when you watch him and you go back and watch him? Are there some things that stand out to you, or is it just a continuation of what you see of him throughout the game?
He is really calm. The demeanor really shines through. I saw this early in the year and I thought it was a really good sign that like here they are in this new offense and like clearly it's a work in progress. Clearly they're figuring out what they're good at. I think we could still have that conversation about are they figuring out what they're good at? And yet they were extremely effective and they were really organized in the red zone. And I took notice of that early in the season that he's someone who, is not acting his leverage moments like someone who hasn't been there before or someone who's quote unquote learning on the job. So I really, that was to me the first real sign because like you, I liked all the skill set stuff. I like how accurate he is. I like his demeanor. I like that in the summer, he's never stacking bad practices. And all of those things were like really good, signs that he could be a pretty good player. And then you get to the games, and until you see them in the games and until they're put to the test, you don't know. And early in the season, when they needed it from him or in 2-minute drills, he was acting like he'd basically run this offense for 3-4 years. And that to me was a really, really, really good sign. And now in the fourth quarter, like all of these games, they're all close across the league. They're all close. And he's showing the affinity to make plays. And, over and over. I mean, the Giants game, which might have been one of his worst games, certainly one of the worst games for the offensive line, certainly one of the worst games for the offense, at least for a half. He took them down the field. And if Jahan Dotson doesn't drop a pass, I know it wasn't perfect, but he didn't drop a pass, they might have tied that game and gone to overtime. So he's really, he feels kind of ahead of the curve. And that's the good news here. Things change. I don't want to go too, I don't want to get too far ahead of anything, but the way he's playing this year, if there was such a thing as breakout player of the year in the NFL honors, he'd get it, in my opinion. Because of the play of CJ Stroud, I don't think he could get NFL offensive player of the year or NFL MVP because of their record. But I do think there's an argument, that he could be offensive player of the year if Stroud's numbers kind of come back to earth a little bit, because he is trending towards, hopefully this will happen, but he does have Dallas twice, Jets, 49ers. His numbers may change here with the defenses that they're playing at the end of the season. But if he keeps going the way he's going, he's going to be a top 5 passer. So he's having as good a first full year as I think we could have imagined. But again, I want to slow the roll on all the he's this or that. And
let's just have him MVP and
look at the defenses that they're playing at the end of the year. Like this could revert back a little bit.
But you want to slow it, but you just had him as MVP. You have him in Canton already.
Not MVP, but like right now, who's the offensive player of the year in the NFL? Name him. Is it CJ Stroud? Probably, right? He's
offensive
definitely the
rookie here. AJ Brown.
AJ Brown. Okay. AJ Brown,
Tyreek Hill. Year too.
AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's going to be the offensive rookie of the year and might be the MVP.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill.
Which means he might be the offensive player of the year. But Sam Howell is the number 1 passer in the NFL right now. Like he has to kind of be in this discussion. And if anyone's even paying attention to what they're doing, it goes back to look at how they're in all these games at the end of the games.
Oh, listen, this kid is the reason. I mean, it's because the defense has been, as we know, it's just been bad. And it's hard to see it improving enough to where you could take advantage of what Howell, has done on offense. And that's why I bring that up. And, a couple of things that really stand out to me, Bram, is, and you brought up like the Giants game. He was horrible in the first half. He had a pretty good second half. They didn't convert, but he had a good second half. It's the way he responds is what always jumps out to me. And I love that I think that's just a terrific quality for him. And then, I think this next stretch coming up will be pivotal for him. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to suddenly go from, I think this kid can be good, to thinking, oh, he's not what I thought. But I just think it's how I'm for growth and development purposes, how does he handle facing the Giants a second time? They got after him great the first time, 6 sacks. How does he handle with that? I think that's to me, it's such a good subplot for this. It's now the main plot for the season, but it's such a good thing to see is how does he handle that? And not because they sacked him 6 times. It's how they were getting to him. It was the protection calls. It was Wink Martindale throwing everything at them. So what does he do? Then you have 4 days later, you have the Cowboys and Micah Parsons. Now it's not all on him to do it, but what I really like, Bram, is that and I talked about this on the film review, is just how the other day, there were a couple times where I felt like, okay, you probably could have held it here just a little bit longer to get to this guy. But what I like, it didn't result in a sack. It was a check down. And what I really like is that he's had all these sacks. And we saw, if you remember, like the John Beck era of 3 games, he had the 10-sack game against Buffalo where he did it. The next game, he checked it down to Roy Halou like 13 times because he didn't want to stand in the pocket. Sam Howell has not changed his play style. I just think he's gotten smarter about when to do things and checking it down a little bit more. And they've gotten smarter with him too. But I like the way he has improved his game and not let the sacks shake him.
Yeah. I describe it as he got hazed in the first 8 weeks of the season.
Oh, that was a hazing.
Things changed. He, again, there are some little things. There's a lot of little things. Like, I wish he would go down a little more. I don't think he needs to take all the hits he takes. But all of these, early signs are really good. And, unfortunately their record is 4-6. I think if they can win this weekend, 5-6 at least makes Thanksgiving very interesting because, they could get themselves back into a conversation if they can go down there and upset the Cowboys. I'm with you. It's not trending the right way. And I don't like their schedule down the stretch, especially the defenses that they're playing and the amount of teams that are likely playoff teams that they're playing down the stretch. But you never know. Like, I watched Denver last night against Buffalo. I was very surprised at how much more competitive they are than what they were, when we saw them back in week 2. So, things could change and I'd like still can. It does feel like yet again, though, they've had a missed opportunity. They could have won in Seattle, should have won in Seattle, in my opinion. They did enough on offense for sure to win. Had they won one of those Eagles games, more likely the first one, the second one. But if they had won one of those, I think we'd be talking about a very different season. And the Giants game and the Bears games are obviously the major letdowns. The Giants game, a particular one, just based on how many people were missing from that game. And then this time around, I mean, I'm sorry, there's just kind of no excuse. Like, the Giants are so beat up, so marginalized on their roster. I don't like to bring up spreads most of the time, but like, that's a big number for a team that's 4-6, and it's for a reason. It's indicative of what, Vegas thinks of the other team. So, there's kind of no excuse. It's a home game, and let's see how they turn it around this week. And hopefully Sam will stay upright. I'm with you. The pressure was the big problem early. I do hope that the changes across the offensive line also help with the protections, because that was a big part of the story back then, was the mistakes by the offensive line in picking up who they were supposed to pick up. It had Sam running for his life. And so, hopefully things are a little different this Sunday.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Our favorite off-season sponsor is back to help you get a jumpstart on your holiday giving. The Adventure Park at Sandy Springs' biggest sale of the year starts November 17th. Save 30% or more on climbing and ziplining gift certificates, season passes, axe throwing packages, and more. Purchases never expire. This holiday season, give the gift of adventure at the country's largest ropes course and zipline park located right here in Montgomery County, Maryland. Named Best Amusement Park in the DMV 2 years in a row, this is an opportunity you won't want to miss. The sale starts Friday, November 17th and runs until Christmas Day. The earlier you buy, the bigger the savings. The best deals won't last. Visit www.theadventurepark.com/Keim today to get early access to the biggest deals. Again, that's www.theadventurepark.com/Keim. Yeah, and by the way, because I know someone else pointed this out, he faced the Eagles the second time, but he played well against the Eagles the first time too. And I'm talking about not so much as he had a good game or bad game, it was handling the pressure. That's the key. The Eagles do not pressure teams the way the Giants do. Nobody does. So it's really about how do you handle the Wink Martindale package. And so that's what it's about. It's not about facing a team for the second time. It's facing a certain style a second time where you gave them a lot of problems. And you're right. Like that was the big problem the last time was the protection calls, and Howell can play a role in that. And he has, like, he definitely can help, but the center's got to be responsible for a lot of that. And there were just too many misses on that. And the funny thing is, Bram, and Tyler Larson and Chris Paul have done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they've been great. I think they're a little bit.
It's considerably better than what it was. I mean, it's like,
because their strength
about what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Their play strength is better. However, there were definitely times last week where those guys are having issues, but Howell makes up for it. And it's happened against New England too. That's what is good is that, but I do when they are stout, they really help that pocket, because you'll see there's more gaps for Howell to maneuver when that happens. And I think that's a good thing. So they'll test him up the middle. And I think that's good for Howell, because again, how do you respond and what are you ready to see and how do you react? That's why you said, I mean, I think you're right. Like, this is not a game. If they lose this game at home,
I don't even want to think about it. It's
that
they've already had a couple of losses. The Cleveland one last year late in the season was really, really hard. The Bears one was inexplicable to me off of, the game that they had played in Philadelphia. To come home against a team that hadn't won in a calendar year and get run off the field like that was inexplicable to me. The Giants one was very tough, but I'll at least chalk up. That's a division team on the road. We have a lot of trouble with them in general. I use we loosely. Sorry, I forget. I don't play sometimes. But if they somehow do not win this weekend, I will be very surprised, and it'll be very, very, very disappointing, because the Giants have every reason to not win much the rest of the year. And this should be a win for Washington, but who knows the way things are going this year.
Yeah. And that's right. And that's the problem. And it's funny because this is going to be a season where there's a lot of what ifs. They're going to look back and is it a play here? It's a play there. And I know there's always complaints about officials. No, if you're good teams in the long run overcome all that stuff. When you're living in
calls, I thought the Forbes thing was ridiculous. And I thought the PI call on St. Juice on the drive that before the touchdown drive
on the 4th and 5,
I didn't like that PI call.
Oh, he was all over him.
That ball was uncatchable.
Because he was all over him.
The ball was uncatchable.
That was a definite PI. I would disagree on that.
I will agree to disagree. I thought the Forbes thing too, and it was early, but I thought the Forbes thing was ridiculous. Honestly,
I didn't think it warranted an ejection. I would agree with that.
He had to get a flag. Obviously.
Yeah. I agree. That one I agree with.
Nothing malicious about that. It was crazy. I thought that was crazy when they threw him.
I will say St. Juice he was draped on him. So here's one thing that bothers me with that play. And Ron Rivera brought it up on Monday, and he felt that Metcalf was jostling with him. It's like, you go back and watch the case. And that was it. To me, it's a clear PI. And so what's the coaching point? St. Juice has a habit of getting up high on guys and grabbing. When you do that in the open field, it's going to be a PI. And that's the lesson there is get your hands a little bit lower and get a reach around. I also think on that one, it's what happened too is he got caught a little bit on the route. And I don't blame him because he's playing for a 7 route or whatever, corner route. And I actually like this as a play call. Efe Obada dropped into the slant lane, but Geno Smith kind of paused and then Metcalf cuts across. It's a nice job by him, but I actually like the defensive play call there. But yes, I would heartily disagree on the PI. But having said that, I don't even want to get into discussion of that because it's irrelevant. Good teams overcome calls over the course of a season. And when you need to get every call, because there were a couple calls, I just saw one earlier where James Smith-Williams could have been called for roughing the passer penalty after a play, and it was on a scramble or something like that, and but wasn't. So it happens. But the problem that I have with this defense, they just don't stop people, and they don't play with good details, and they don't they give up too many big plays every week, and some weeks when they don't give up big plays, the big plays were there, they just weren't found or hit. So, and I don't know, like, do you have any reason to believe or hope that that's going to change for them over the next 7 weeks?
What, just overall defense?
Yeah, the overall defense.
I'd like to be open-minded. I don't think they generate a pass rush. So that's the hard part here. And it's the story of the season to me, like that they have not been able to generate a consistent pass rush. The stars in the interior, I thought actually Allen had a better game this past week than he has in recent weeks, but just go look at their numbers. It's just not happening. They're not as disruptive as they have been. And on the edge, they're not able, when they bring four, it's unusual for them to get a consistent pass rush. There's moments, but it's very unusual for them to get a consistent pass rush. I actually thought in general for about, like the first half into the early part of the third quarter before the big play to Walker, that really was a slip by Danny Johnson and a bad tackle. I actually thought the defense played okay. I mean, you're going to give up plays to that team.
They were stopping him in the red zone until that.
Yeah, you're stopping him in the red zone. You're not going to shut a team like that down. Like, I would argue outside of the Eagles that's the best collection of skill position people that they played, this year, altogether. Maybe not the best quarterback, but the best skill position. Those three receivers, that's tough cover. Those running backs, that's tough ass. You see how fast and shifty Walker is. I mean, that's a really tough, that's a very good collection of skill position.
You were a big Walker fan coming out of the draft too, if I remember.
Yes, big Walker fan coming out of the draft. DK is a monster. Lockett is a pro's pro. Like, that's a very, very, very tough team to cover. And their third best receiver is a first round pick. Like that's a very, very, very tough team to deal with. I thought that going in. And because of the propensity to give up all the big plays, I was worried that they would get hit with a number of them. And really, honestly, when you rewatch, if you go through the first half into the early parts of the second half before the Walker play, which was just an unfortunate slip by Johnson on a very slick field, and then a bad tackle, by Percy Butler, turns into a big play. Like, I actually thought the defense played relatively well. Like, they're going to give up some yards or give up some plays, but they didn't. They weren't getting hurt.
They played better situationally, third down in red zone.
Yes. And then it here, it spiraled a little bit. And late in the game, which was very disappointing, was all the penalties, like late on the defense. All those penalties really, really hurt them. And the other bottom line is, too, they just can't consistently get a pass rush, especially when they only bring four. And, that to me is the story of the season. Like I expected better. I think they have a lot of team speed. I thought their front four would control the line of scrimmage more than they have, and they haven't. And if you go watch in the second half too, especially against Seattle, they were getting gashed on the ground game. The attrition of the game had started to wear on them. The holes were getting wider, the pockets were getting cleaner, and it was just a matter of time before Seattle hit some plays and started to score some points. So it was tough to watch, but will it get better? I mean, I don't see how it can't this week, just based on the opponent.
Well, yeah, this is a get healthy. You should be.
You should be. And then I guess we'll see against Dallas because, that's a really, really good offense. So I guess we'll find out when we play them on Thanksgiving.
Listen, and I guess, well, by the way, just to clarify, on the 4th and 5, I didn't say that he was expecting a 7-yard route. I said he was expecting a 7 route, which is a corner route. So there's a difference, and he was playing that way, and that's why F.A. Obata was dropping into the slant lane. So they had both. Those are the couple routes you're going to run from the alignment that Metcalf had. That's what you're looking to run, and so that's what he was expecting. You could tell by his leverage, but he also knew that he had a guy inside to guard against the slant, so he could. But the other thing, Graham, too, is the offensive mix. And I'm going to ask you a question. Are you okay with it? But I'm going to clarify one thing, because I know there's a lot of, they need to run the ball more, blah, blah, blah. I think they could run the ball a little bit more. I'd like to see them run it better, but I go back to training camp, and I'm curious what you think on this too. If you remember, in the spring and the summer, they barely worked on the run game for a long time. And so is there any surprise by you at all that they're really not just a heavy run team, but a team that doesn't run the ball better?
That's a good question. I've now come to terms with this is who they are.
Exactly.
I've been screaming into the wind, they need to run the ball more, and then they just don't do it. Even I mean, go look at, I will say this though, like, I think we have a little short-term memory here. They started a lot of drives this last game running the ball, like more so than they have recently. If you go back and watch, they actually started more drives running the ball than you would think, and you may remember.
They did, but they did have success, so that's the problem. There was like
they
2
didn't have
yards
success with it. They only really had success with that one drive in the second half late when they ran it 4 straight times. They had a couple of nice runs. One was best run of the day was an opening drive run with Robinson. They backed it up with another long Robinson run that was really a good effort run by him. And, I do think I saw someone write in the chat that, they think Antonio Gibson has come around. So do I. Like, I think
I was going to ask you about him too, for that reason.
More impactful player here in a lot of different ways, over the last couple of weeks. Maybe getting past the trade deadline woke him up a little bit and allowed him to kind of get comfortable again. But should they run it more? Yeah, I think so. Like, I like the idea of Robinson getting more carries because I think he's the type of player that will get better as the game goes on. And it's the type of player a defense doesn't want to see when they're grinding things out, but it's just not who they are. This is not what they're going to be. I think the biggest surprise to me this year with that is it a surprise if you follow the Chiefs that Eric Bieniemy would come here and be more of a pass forward offense? No, it shouldn't be.
No.
Would I have expected 70-30 at times or 65-35? No, I wouldn't have expected that either. I would have thought it would have been a little closer, but 60-40 wouldn't overly surprise me. I think the part that's interesting about it is we know, because Rivera has publicly talked about in the past when he wanted the team to run the ball more because you can just feel the old school seeping out of him to be a more physical team, to do that when he feels it's necessary to do so. He publicly did it to Scott Turner multiple times in the past. He will not do it here. He won't. He is standing behind Bieniemy, and whatever Bieniemy says goes, and they're building this offense this way. At the same time, Sam Howell's development and Sam Howell's numbers speak for themselves. Their offense is middle of the pack now. They are scoring at a higher clip than they were a year ago. Like, all those things are better. It is the first go around with everybody together. I want to be fair to everyone and let them learn each other. But there is a part of me that goes, I would like to see them run the ball a little bit more. But to your point, oftentimes when they do start drives with it, it's not overly effective. It's just that I think like sometimes they just get away from it. Like, it's a run didn't work. Okay, fine. Let's throw 5 passes. And there are other times like on 2.5 yard, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 late in the game, they're not running the ball for that. So it kind of tells you how they feel about their run game as well.
Yeah. And by the way, and I'm looking it up right now, in time of possession for the season, they're 12th. So they're averaging over 30 minutes a game time of possession, which, is pretty good. So I don't know. That's a good thing. And so that's what you want. You want to control the ball, right? And they have been doing that. So I think that's a good thing for them. But I think the other thing, Bram, like I said, my problem with the run game isn't so much that they don't run it more. It's that they're really not that good at it. And I go back to it's never been a point of emphasis. And you can tell when there's missed assignments, so they're just not sharp in the run game. So you can, people can ask to see them run it more. I don't think they're equipped to do that. I don't think they work on it enough, it seems. And when I
watched him in the summer, I think I talked to you about this.
Yes, I remember.
I was questioning openly, like, do they have the right backs that fit what they're trying to do in the run game? Because it felt like what they were working on was more of a stretch run game. And I wasn't sure that either one of the backs were really kind of fitting that. Like, I liked them both, the 2 primary ones, Gibson and Robinson. I like Robinson a lot. And I think Gibson is a weapon, and they're finally figuring him out and unlocking him a little bit as a weapon. Is very versatile for them. But I wasn't sure that they had like a Pacheco type that's like this kind of stretch back, and that to me was like a little, that's where I started to go, are they going to be good at running the ball? They have good players, but do they fit what they want to do? And maybe that's part of why they are more pass heavy, because they don't feel like they have the type of running backs that do that. At the same time, I do think that there's a place in the NFL for a power game, and you do have a really good power back. And I know that deep down, Ron Rivera wants to, punch somebody in the mouth. So I'm a little surprised, that at times they don't do a little bit more of it.
No, and right. But again, I just don't know that they're, even if they're doing it more, doesn't make them better at it. That's my problem, is I don't think they're very good at it. So doing it more, I'm not sure that they're going to have to go, because they work so much more on throwing the ball. And, I think some of the problems with the backs is getting the patience needed for some of those counters, et cetera. And so I think that's a problem. So Juan says, what about Chris Rodriguez? I thought he was going to get more carries lately, and because he was starting to trend that way. And ever since then, he's gotten nothing. But the pass game is such a big key, and Robinson and Gibson are doing a very good job there. Brian Robinson is a good receiving back. Like, I don't have a problem with them keeping him in there for that reason. But it's the problem with the run game isn't always the backs. I mean, you watched last week, there were a couple times where Witherspoon starts to go off the edge and the receiver doesn't get him. And so the tackle jumps out and then the defensive end goes inside the tackle. Well, no one. And it's like, I don't know why he jumped out, because that guy wasn't a threat to the play. So he leaves the guy who's more dangerous coming down the line and he makes a stop. That stuff happens all the time with them. So that's why I say to me, it's like they've got to figure out a way to run it better more than they have to run it more. And sometimes it goes hand in hand. I just think that in this case, it's just not who they want to be. And so we're just going to, like, say, can they be more efficient with it? Because the other thing, Bram, Pete Carroll had talked about this after the game about when Washington started running it, and it kept them a little bit more off balance in that fourth quarter about what to expect. So there's part of that is what comes into it. It's not just about play action, but it's about just in general, what does this formation, what does it mean?
It's so funny you said that. Like, I've been watching Washington football since I can remember. I've seen every play they've run since I was 6. I'm 50 now. I never thought I'd see the day where another coach was surprised we run the ball.
I mean, it's kind of amazing, isn't it?
That's a total new one to me.
Yeah. So no, I don't know. But that, it's just, to me, I wouldn't say it's disappointing. I thought they'd run better, but I do like, I do understand the extended handoff theory, and that's what they're doing. And lately they've been incorporating more quicker throws early in games, which I think helps.
A lot of the first down plays the other day went to tight ends, very quick throws, center of the field. They're running bubble screens. They're trying to get the ball in the hands of Samuel. They're trying to get it in McLaurin. Gibson's getting more looks and touches. So I agree. Like, it is an extension of the run game. Like, they're not, I get it. They're not traditionally handing it off, but there are a lot of plays that I would, counter as it might as well be a pitch, like it might as well be a run play.
Right. And I'm okay with, like I said, I'm okay with some of that. I just would like to see him run it better and be more effective with it, because you can't be, and, Lyman will talk about, like, they don't want to be one dimensional because they know what the problems that creates. But, but for Sam Howell's development, it's been pretty good, because the kid's starting to really show a thing or two. And I hope for his sake, like on Thanksgiving, that he, that the country sees more of what we've been seeing.
Yeah.
So I think that's something there. And I do want to answer this. Nate wants to know, what is Larson doing that Gates wasn't? Seems like a more cohesive line with Larson in there. So I think that's a good question. I think one of the things, Nate, is that Larson is like almost 30 pounds bigger than Gates. That's a big deal when you're playing inside. And if you notice, like, Gates fought his butt off. I mean, that wasn't the issue. It's the ability to anchor. So I think when you see, there are times where Larson, I think, anchors better. And then some of it comes back to protection calls. How is he handling that? And they certainly seem to think in the Giants game that there were some issues with that. I haven't seen there was one time, I think, against New England where I thought there was a protection snafu just with what they were anticipating. But otherwise, it's been cleaner. Sunday against the Giants will be a lot more telling, because the other, nobody runs things like they do. And so that'll be telling. But the size, to me, makes a difference. That stout, that's what you heard with Larson, that they like his ability to be very stout. And with the shorter quarterback, that matters. So you got any other questions here, Bram? And some of it, people are starting to look ahead. I'm not going to start addressing who may or may not be coming here or whatever. We're a little bit from that. So I don't want to go down that. Yeah, I'm not going down those roads at this point. So
play the season.
But I do.
No, and the season will play when the season's over. Whenever that comes, whether hopefully it's in January. Hopefully we're not discussing not making the playoffs in the next couple of weeks. Let's let it play out. That's the way I feel about it. My understanding of the ownership was they were going to let the season play out. Then they'll make decisions about what they want to do.
Yeah.
So I have seen no evidence that they've changed their mind about that. And therefore I'm in no rush to try to figure out what's going to happen because I don't think they've made their minds up about anything.
No. And I think, there's a couple of things, and I know like I can address this from the outside. People every week it's fire this guy, fire that guy. Well, that's all fine and dandy. Then what? And so what's the purpose here other than making some people feel better? If something's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's not like college where you can go out and hire, start getting a beat on somebody. They can be compiling lists right now of guys if they're on that road, but you have to have alternatives. And they want to see. What they also know is that this team rebounded each of the last 3 years and went on a little bit of a run during this time of the year. So they want to see how this plays out.
Undermine the whole thing. What purpose would it serve for them to come in? And it doesn't. Like I feel this way all the time. And like as a reporter / then team employee, this is how I feel about it. I'm worried about the Giants on Sunday. I don't care what's happening next year yet. And if you're at the point where you're thinking about something else other than what's in front of you, you're going to lose. We need to be rowing the same boat here. That's the way I feel about it. I'm getting ready to call a game against the Giants this weekend. I don't care who the coach is next year.
There's nobody clear to take over. And again, I know, can't, but like, just let's say because they get this all the time about with Ron Rivera, well, who takes over, and you're not putting Bieniemy in charge. And they don't, they want to keep that offensive staff on that side. You don't put a guy in who's just now learning to be an offense coordinator and full-time play caller and then say, oh, by the way, here's the head coaching duties. Good luck with all this. And, Jack Del Rio is head coach.
Let's get through the season. That's the way I feel about it.
So anyways, it's not.
They're not out yet. The season's not over. Like, what are we talking about here? They could be 5-6 when we do this next Tuesday.
Correct. Right. And it's not right. Despite what anybody else thinks, in that building, it's not over. Anyways, but I did want to ask this real quick. Juan wants to know Gibson, and we talked about this, Gibson being great the last 2 games, EB realizing his weapon. Well, some of those aren't them realizing his a weapon. Some of those come in the context of a play and how getting the ball to him is a check down or something else. Do you think they extend him? That all depends on, this goes back to what we just talked about. We don't know who's going to be here. So it's really hard to answer that question. But I do think I agree with the premise that he has shown what he can do in the open field when you get that chance. He's and same thing with Robinson. I think both those guys as pass catchers can help this team. And I think, but anyway, so Brad, you got any parting thoughts?
By the way, too, underrated. He's gotten a lot of opportunities to return kicks lately.
Yeah.
And he's been close to popping a couple of them.
Yeah.
And I think I was just doing it because I'm getting ready for the game on Sunday. He's number 3 in the NFL in kickoff return average.
He's done a good job there.
He's done a good job there. As far as extending him, the market for running backs is so bad that I don't think it will cost them a lot to do so if they choose to do so.
I agree. And I think he's done a nice job. And I feel like the last 2 games, he's especially like against New England, I really liked what he did. And so, that was all good. So anyway, Bram, that's all. Kept you a long time. And I appreciate everybody tuning in. I will be back with another show on Thursday and then the keys and predictions on the weekend. So talk to you next time.